The notice had been on the village board for 6 days before anyone answered it. Mira Ashford had written it herself, standing at the kitchen table at midnight with a candle burning low and her son asleep in the next room. She kept the words simple. One farmhand needed. Meals provided. A place to sleep in the barn. No wages until harvest. She did not write the part about the debt. She did not write the part about how close she was to losing everything her husband had left behind, which was not much, and most of it broken. The morning Grudge came down the road. Mira was on the porch mending a feed sack. She saw him from a distance first, a large shape moving slowly, a pack over one shoulder, dust on his boots. As he got closer, she saw the gray-green skin, the broad jaw, the 2 short tusks that curved up from his lower lip. An orc. She had seen orcs before, in the market town 2 hours east, but never one walking up her road. She did not put down the feed sack. She did not move toward the pitchfork leaning against the wall, but she did not move away from it either. He stopped at the gate. "I saw the notice," he said. His voice was low and even, like a door closing gently. "Is the position still open?" "It is," Mira said. "Before you decide," he said, "I'd like to see the land, if that's all right." She walked him around the farm without much talking. He looked at everything carefully, the fences, the fields, the ditch running along the north side, the soil near the creek. He crouched down once and pressed 2 fingers into the earth and held them there for a moment like he was listening to something. When they came back to the porch, he said, "The western fence will fail before the month is out. The irrigation ditch is carrying rot into your north field. The soil near the creek is salvageable, but someone needs to move on it soon." Mira looked at him. "You're right about all 3. He nodded once. "I can offer you the barn," she said. "The stable is fine," he said. "I won't be a burden." She almost told him the stable leaked in the east corner when it rained hard. She didn't. His name, he told her, was Gruckden. But every town he passed through called him Grudge, and he had stopped correcting people some years back. Mira called him Grudge because it was the name he answered to, and she had no interest in giving a man a name he didn't want. He moved his pack into the stable that evening and was up before sunrise the next morning. By the time Mira came out at dawn, he had already begun on the western fence. Her son Eli watched him from the kitchen window for 4 days without going near him. Eli was 9 years old, missing his front tooth, and had recently begun keeping a list in his coat pocket of things he wanted to know. He had added 3 new items to the list since Grudge arrived, all of them about orcs. Mira told Eli to leave the man alone and let him work. The village had other ideas. By the 2nd day, her neighbor Petra had stopped by to check on her, which meant standing at the kitchen window for 20 minutes and asking careful questions. By the 4th day, the merchant Doss in town refused to sell Grudge supplies directly, making him wait outside on the step while Mira went in. One of Eli's teachers pulled him aside at school and asked if the orc was frightening him. Eli said no. He said it in the flat, certain way that children say things when they have already made up their minds. Mira handled the village the same way she handled most problems. She didn't. She went home, handed Grudge a list of repairs, and went back to the bookkeeping that kept her up past midnight every night, moving small numbers around and hoping they would eventually become a larger number. 3 weeks after Grudge arrived, he found the blight. He came to the farmhouse door at dusk and knocked twice, which was unusual. He normally left updates on a piece of folded paper on the porch railing, because he had noticed early on that Mira did not love being interrupted during work hours. She opened the door and saw something careful in his expression, not fear, but the particular steadiness of a person about to deliver bad news. "You need to come see the north field," he said. She followed him out in the fading light. He walked her to the center of the field and crouched down and showed her, a soil fungus, moving underground, already invisible from above. You only saw it when the stalks began falling. It had taken a third of the field already. Mira stood in the half-dead barley and looked at the ground for a long time. Grudge stood beside her. He did not say anything. He did not try to make it smaller than it was, and he did not try to rush her past it. He just stood there while she looked at the field and understood what it meant. Then he told her what could be saved and what needed to come out tonight. They worked until 2 in the morning. Side by side, pulling infected stalks by lamplight, working in a line from the center outward. Myra's arms ached by midnight. She didn't say so. Neither did he. Eli appeared on the porch at some point and sat on the steps watching them, his chin in his hands. Mira told him to go to bed. He went inside. But he didn't sleep. The next morning, Eli appeared at the stable door before breakfast with 2 pieces of bread on a plate and his list in his other hand. Grudge was sitting on a low stool repairing a hinge. He looked at the bread, then at the boy, then at the list. "Is that for me?" he asked, meaning the bread. "Yes," Eli said. "Can I ask you some questions?" Grudge took the bread. "Go ahead." Eli asked 11 questions. Grudge answered all of them. He answered the question about whether orcs could see in the dark, somewhat, the question about how big his hands were. Eli measured them against his own, which took a moment, and the question about what war sounded like from the inside. He answered that last one so quietly that Eli leaned forward on the stool he had dragged over. Grudge described it in plain words without any decoration, the way you describe weather, what it looked like, what it smelled like, the sound of it, and then the sound of nothing after. Eli listened to every word. That evening Eli told his mother that Grudge was the most honest person he had ever met. Mira was at the stove and she did not turn around. She said, "That's good to know." She was looking at the repaired western fence through the window above the sink, and she was thinking that Eli was probably right. The creditor came on a Tuesday. His name was Voss. He was from the regional bank, not the small local branch, but the institution that held the original farm debt, the one Myra's husband had taken out without telling her and mentioned only in the last 2 weeks of his life, quietly and without meeting her eyes. Voss was a tidy man in a good coat. He was polite the way certain tools are polite before they do what they're built to do. He stood on the porch and gave Mira 30 days to produce the outstanding amount, or begin the process of transferring the property. He was still speaking when Grudge came around the corner of the house with the repaired irrigation gate on one shoulder. He was dirty from a morning of work and he set the gate down against the wall without hurry. He did not say anything. He did not look at Voss in any particular way. He simply set down the gate and stood. Voss finished his sentence more quickly than he had started it. He said good day and left. Mira knew Grudge had not planned it. That was the part she kept returning to. She told him that evening about the debt, the full amount, the timeline, the way her husband had apologized for it without ever explaining why he had done it. Grudge listened. He did not offer opinions about her husband. He did not offer sympathy in a shape she hadn't asked for. He just listened until she was done. Then he said, "I have savings. Enough for what's owed. I'm offering it as a loan. You set the repayment terms. There's no urgency beyond the 30 days. Mira looked at the table. "No," she said. Grudge said, "All right." And that was the end of it. He went back to the stable and she went back to her numbers and 3 days passed with nothing more said on the subject. On the 4th day, Eli came into the kitchen while Mira was doing the breakfast dishes. He put a folded piece of paper on the counter beside her without saying anything. She picked it up and opened it. It was his list. But this version had only one item on it. "Why won't you let him help us, Mama?" She stood at the sink with the paper in her wet hands and the water still running, and she read it twice. Then she dried her hands. She folded the paper very carefully, the way you handle something that has made a small tear in something larger, and she put it in her apron pocket. She walked out to the north field. Grudge was turning the salvaged soil, working slowly and in a line, the way he did everything. He did not look up when she approached, but he had heard her coming, he always heard her coming. "I've changed my mind," she said. He nodded once and kept working. She stood there a moment, not sure what she had expected. "The terms," she said. "You decide them," he said. She decided them that evening, wrote them on paper, and slid the page across the table to him. He read it, picked up the pen, and signed it without negotiating a single point. She noticed that the repayment period she had set was shorter than what he would have allowed. She had done that on purpose. She wasn't entirely sure why. The harvest came in October. The barley that had survived the blight came in stronger than the previous 2 years combined. The salvaged north field, the one she and Grudge had worked in the middle of the night by lamplight, produced enough grain to clear the debt entirely and leave a small amount remaining. Mira stood in the field on the last day of harvest and looked at it for a while. The sky was very blue. The air smelled like cut grain and coming cold. The village came to buy. Doss came too, and he bought twice his usual amount without making eye contact with Grudge, which was the closest he would come to an apology and which Mira accepted on behalf of everyone because she was tired of carrying other people's discomfort. She paid back the loan in full at the end of October. She put the ledger on the table at dinner with the balance zeroed and pushed it toward Grudge. He picked it up, looked at it for a moment, and put it back on the table without comment. It was the most satisfied she had ever seen him look. "What will you do now?" she asked. "The big work is done." "I don't know yet," he said. "The fences will need winterizing," she said. "That's true," he said. They looked at each other across the table. Eli, sitting between them with barley soup going cold in his bowl, looked from one to the other and said, with great calm, "He's staying, Mama. It's obvious." Neither of them answered him. Eli went back to his soup. The winter settled in slowly and then all at once, the way it always did. The first frost came on a Friday night. By morning, the fields were silver and quiet, and the air had that particular sharpness that meant months of short days and long evenings ahead. Mira spent 2 evenings clearing out the small room off the kitchen. It had been used for storage, old seed sacks, broken tools, boxes she had never unpacked after her husband died. She worked in the evenings after Eli was in bed, telling herself it was simply a practical decision. The stable was cold. It made no sense to have a man sleeping in a cold stable in November when there was a room in the house sitting empty. She did not tell Grudge she was doing it. She put a cot in the room, and a lamp, and a small hook on the back of the door for his coat. Then she told him the room was ready if he wanted it. He moved his things from the stable to the room that same afternoon. He did not make anything of it, which was exactly right. That winter he ate at the table. He woke before dawn and taught Eli to read the soil by touch, pressing the boy's small hands into the cold ground and explaining what the texture meant, what it held, what it needed. He repaired the barn roof in December. He fixed the kitchen window latch that had been broken for a year and a half, and he did it without Mira asking, on a Sunday afternoon while she was reading, and she heard the small click of it finally closing properly and something loosened in her chest. He did not say he was in love with her. He did not say he was staying forever. He was not a man who said things before he was sure of them, and Mira understood this because she was not the kind of woman either. What he did was this. One afternoon in late November, he came back from the far field with a bunch of wildflowers. Not many, 8 or 9, the last ones of the season, small and pale, the kind that push through cold soil because they don't know they're supposed to have stopped. He put them on the porch railing and went inside to wash up for dinner. He didn't say anything about them. Mira saw them when she came out to hang a coat. She stood on the porch for a moment. The sun was going down over the barley fields and the sky was the color of embers. She picked up the flowers and took them inside and put them in a jar of water on the kitchen windowsill. She didn't mention them at dinner. She didn't mention them the next day either, or the day after. She just kept them in the water and changed the water when it needed changing and watched them quietly from across the room the way you watch something you don't want to disturb. She kept them until the last petal fell, which was 11 days later, on a cold gray morning in December. Then she put the empty jar back on the windowsill because she had gotten used to it being there. Grudge had promised to sleep in the stable and never be a burden. He had kept one part of that promise. He was no burden. He had never been a burden, not for a single day of the months he had been there. But he had not stayed in the stable. He had stayed in the room off the kitchen, where there was a cot and a lamp and a hook on the door for his coat. He had stayed at the table where Eli asked him questions and Mira passed him bread without being asked. He had stayed in the north field at 2 in the morning, pulling 6 stalks out of the ground by lamplight because the farm needed it. He had stayed on the porch the evening Voss came, not saying anything, just being the large and quiet and honest person he was, which turned out to be enough. He had stayed. That was the thing he had not promised, and the thing he had done anyway, slowly and without ceremony, the way a person grows into a place not by claiming it but by becoming part of what holds it together. Mira understood this on a cold morning in December, standing at the kitchen window with a cup of tea, watching Grudge and Eli walk out to the field together, Eli talking at full speed the way he did in the mornings, Grudge listening with his full attention, which was the only way he knew how to listen. The barley fields were bare and silver. The sky was low and pale. Her farm was still standing. She held the cup with both hands and let it warm her. Outside, Eli pointed at something in the soil and Grudge crouched down beside him to look, and whatever it was worth stopping for, and they stopped.